I was moving back into my own property. So I gave them the N12 and they basically just said no.
Okay, how are you going to guarantee vacant possession here? How much value does it hurt your property when selling tenanted?
Most of my calls from condo sellers now is, hey, the tenant gave notice. Should I sell it now?
If your tenant leaves and you're thinking about selling within the next year or 2 or 3, vacant is way better. You told me a horror story the other day that you just have to tell me if you can say it or not.
I can say it. All the wallpaper has been ripped off the wall. Their clothing is in the wash. They've left all these things at the property. It hasn't even, is this not property damage?
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Zachary gets to figure that out because he just got engaged. So,
Yeah. Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. We appreciate everybody being back with us on this week's episode. And I'm very excited to bring you someone. We get told all the time, Zachary, in the comments, that me and Steve didn't have to do any schooling to get into our job. But we brought a guest today that actually had to go to school, probably several years of school. Zachary Soccio-Marandola has joined the show today. He is a real estate lawyer here in the city of Toronto. And we're going to pepper you with questions today. So Zachary, thank you for being here. And are you excited to talk about real estate? Are you talking about it too much?
Excited to talk about real estate. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. I was just telling you before we started recording, typically what I think of as a real estate lawyer is an older gentleman that is good at their job, but just there's no social media at all. I was actually introduced to you from two ways. I heard a realtor in my office talk about the newsletter that you send. And mostly newsletters are like, well, how quick can I unsubscribe from that? Where people are actually like, no, this one's really good. And then I started seeing you on social. I'm like, oh, Annie's good on camera. So I'm excited for you to be here. Can you give our audience a bit of a background on how long you've been doing this? Was it always real estate law? It was always going to be this? Like a little bit of background on your situation.
Yeah, of course. So for me, it was always real estate law. I mean, I run my practice now in downtown Toronto. We focus exclusively on residential real estate transactions. So purchase, sale, refinance, title transfer.
Yep.
And I came at this from, I've had a real estate license since 2016.
Oh.
I worked as a broker for 6 years.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. So I've come at this from a very different angle. So I grew up in the business. My father's been a realtor since 1987. So he also built a property management company. So my introduction as a 13-year-old kid was cutting the grass at all the rental properties.
Right.
As I went and did my undergrad, when I'd come back in the summer, I would work in the accounting office and learn the business end of the management side. In my last year, I went and got my real estate license. I took a year off before law school and I shadowed it. I learned how to write the agreement of purchase and sale. Got to do everything that you do in the first year of being a realtor, but less of trying to find my own clients and actually getting to sit in on the meetings and see deals get done. Then I went to law school. I bought a condo in London. I went to Western.
Okay.
And I set up a little real estate office in the second floor of my condo. They had a little commercial space. So I took a little office, rented it out, and that was my real estate business. So instead of taking summer law jobs, I worked as a realtor. And that was my introduction to, hey, throw yourself in a city where you don't know a single person.
Right.
And now figure out how to go get clients, right? Figure out how to get leads, SEO, and how to actually convince somebody to hire you and then take a client from that initial home buying process all the way to closing. Also then getting to be in law school and then work with real estate lawyers, figuring out, okay, I like what this person's doing. I don't like what this person's doing.
Right.
And then all of that leading up to, okay, now I'm graduating, move to Toronto, do my articling. The second I was done, I knew what I was doing. I was going out on my own and building my practice.
But was there a moment there when you had the real estate license and you were like, I know I'm doing this to become a lawyer, but maybe I'm going to like this more? Like that decision to be made, when did that actually happen?
Yeah. So I didn't go to school thinking, oh, I'm going to go become a lawyer. I was studying finance. I thought I was going to become a realtor. And it was probably somewhere in that last year of undergrad where I thought, you know what, I want to actually take this to, a different side of things. I started looking at law school and I thought, you know what, I can do a lot from this angle of things.
That's interesting. So no real estate trading anymore. You don't do it on the side, but you're still holding your license?
I still hold a license, yeah. So I won't take on a client personally because, again, we work with a lot of them. So I have a few that I refer to.
Right.
But I use it for my own personal stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm not calling someone to go for a showing. I'll just go.
So in your business right now, City of Toronto, one of the things that we've talked about a lot on the podcast recently is that our general just sales numbers in the GTA have been historically low, really since the summer of 2022. And you guys are a little bit behind us because we're meeting the clients, doing the transaction, then the lawyers getting involved and kind of taking it from there and holding their hand until the closing day. Are you now busy in August, or is it a dead summer? What are you seeing on your side of things? Because you're kind of the last stop before it gets to actually closed.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw the beginning of the year started off pretty slow. Actually, January and February were okay, and then it really kind of just took a dead dive.
Tariffs really kind of punched us in the stomach, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember April being like, wow, this is like dead. And then, May got a little busier, and then, June started to pick up. We saw a lot in July, but again, we lag on the numbers that you guys see. So when you're talking about, okay, when you see sales numbers in the MLS, that's a deal firming up. So closings usually 30, 60 days past that.
Yep.
So yeah, like when I look at my calendar for, just this month and September, they're very busy. Right. And we typically see higher in the summer, right?
Right.
We see more transactions, families trying to move at those points.
Get in there before the school year starts, right? Get into the school district. Are you on I don't know if you look at it this way like we would as real estate agents, but when you're looking at the closings that you're doing, is it first-time home buyers buying? I guess you'd know because the land transfer tax conversation. How many of those first-time home? I'm just going to give you 10 questions here, and you can say whatever you want. How many parents are co-signing for those first-time home buyers to get the mortgage approval done? Is it downsizers that are transacting right now? Like, who is actually getting in front of you that you're helping them close? Is there any investors, or is it just end users?
Seeing very little. Well, I'm saying that I'm seeing very little investors. I was in a call this morning or a meeting with one buying in Kitchener, but I'm seeing a lot of first-time home buyers and less actual co-signers than you would think. But also banks are figuring things out differently, right? There's a couple different programs where they're not necessarily going on title. And I notice those ones because then we get into the more complicated things of, okay, are we doing a trust agreement, right? Because you hear these horror stories of, you put the parents on title and then the relationship breaks down, and then, do the parents want their money back? Where do things go from here? So, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of that. We're seeing a decent amount of first-time home buyers, surprisingly. But that age is not what, even what I was seeing in, 2016 when I started. I've got first-time home buyers at 40 years old, right? And that's not uncommon. So we're seeing a good amount of that too. And then, but still our most common is going to be upsizers or downsizers. So just moving the property ladder.
The upsizer conversation, this is like when I'm a big part of my business is meeting with people to sell their condos and then help them buy a house. That's probably so far this year 50% of the transactions that we're doing, which you think as a business owner is like, oh, that's great. You get 2 transactions instead of 1. The issue being is the condo's taken a while to sell. And then when the condo's finally sold, they're just so eager to go buy a house that happens pretty quickly. But then it's like, okay, well, what are we doing with closing? We need the funds from the condo to close on the house. Are we doing it on the same day? Are we getting bridge financing for the day? Is there any horror stories that like people need to know about? Because a ton of people, there's 2 transactions happening. They're trying to line them up.
Yeah. And I mean, I know Steve, you guys, I think deal with this very differently, but so I do a lot of like trainings with brokerages. So, I like to go through the agreement of purchase and sale and like highlight things that, to really pay attention to. And I stop at completion date. Everyone's like, well, this is easy. I'm like, okay, there's a little more to this, right? It's not just about, hey, don't pick a weekend or a holiday, which, by the way, they still do. There's, a consideration of this buying and selling on the same day. And in simple terms, the risk of doing that is, you increase the risk of not having the funds to be able to close. Right. Because there's, 25 different things that can delay your sale proceeds on the day of closing, right? When we're, if you're buying and selling on the same day, Tom, and you need the sale proceeds in order to close that purchase, right? Those funds are attached to a buyer on the other end. What if that buyer is also waiting on the sale proceeds? in order to fund that purchase, right? We can have a domino effect 10 transactions long. And if there's a problem in one of those or a delay, and the delays are very common, then we have an issue closing on time, right? And delays come from, you can have the clients or the buyer and seller arguing over a dishwasher, or was the unit professionally cleaned? You've got banks that a wire transfer can get delayed for 2 or 3 hours. Or, we've had lenders who sometimes they have to send a physical check instead of wiring the mortgage funds. Yeah. I had one just a month ago where, we select the branch. So I put something close to my office so I can go get it. And the funds ended up a physical check in Brampton. And, their response was, okay, well, we can't do anything now. Funds are out. Yeah. So I had to go work with a manager out in the bank in Brampton to figure out how the heck do we get these funds here in time to close.
How did it get there? Was it a courier just dropped it off at the wrong bank?
We
or
were
they
going to
just
do a courier. That was like the answer for a while. And then we figured out he was able to deposit it back, and then they were able to rewire it from his bank to mine. So I didn't actually have to leave the office, but I thought, I take the subway. And so I'd have to subway home and then get in my car and go from there. Like, it's like, I don't think we can make this in time. So like, again, there's so many things that can delay. Like, then you look at the law firms, right? Like, what if I've 8 transactions in a day and this one's down the list on the to-do list, right? What if I'm putting out fires in the other 2 and I can't get to this one till later? So one thing my clerk does really well, and a lot of them do communicate, is like, hey, notifying the other one, we're buying and selling on the same day.
Right.
So just so funds might come in later, or do what you have to do to figure this out, prioritize the right ones. But these are considerations that obviously aren't coming into the conversation when it's setting up the completion date. So, and I guess from your side, how do you handle that? Like, do you find clients are looking to buy and sell on the same day? Like, they want that?
They usually want to. And what we typically recommend, and that they're usually open to, is doing a 1-day difference and just getting the bridge financing for that 1 day, like closing on your place first and then closing on the next property the day after. And Steve thinks this is crazy that they would like put all their stuff in a U-Haul and leave it overnight and then move in the next day. But then the other thing, Steve, I don't know what your APS says but Zachary, like, as you know, on the Ontario APS, it says on the completion date, it says 6 p.m.
So like a deal has to be done by 6 p.m.
On the APS, it says 6 p.m., but sometimes closings happen much earlier than that. I find typically in Toronto, they're happening between 3 and 5 p.m. is like usually, actually, I don't even really find out mostly. That's when it happens, right? Yeah, lawyers got to have their lunch. You got to make sure that they can eat, right? And then they get to it in the afternoon. But that 6 p.m. time, does that actually mean anything in the agreement? Because it could happen at any point. Like, if you close early, are you technically not allowed to go to the house till 6 p.m.?
Yeah, so I hear that as like, people say, well, I can stay in the house till 6 p.m. because that's what the contract says. And that's not what the contract says. It means closing can take place at any point up until 6 p.m.
Got it.
So closing is done once all the requisites have been exchanged. And then we register. And I believe even technically registration is not one of the requisites. We can theoretically be closed and just have to register. That's closing an escrow, and that happens a lot because that 6 p.m. deadline doesn't line up with the land registry office. Land registry office closes at 5 p.m. So there's situations where money comes in at 5:30. Okay, we've exchanged everything. We're theoretically closed.
Right.
Then we enter into an escrow closing agreement that says, hey, we're going to register this formally next business day. So, usually next day, if that's a Friday, we're talking about not registering till Monday.
But imagine that was the place you sold, and then you had a closing on the buy that afternoon. That just, like, I don't know, like, what are you supposed to do at that point? Because there's so many layers, right?
Possession. That's still possession. But the nightmare scenario is, okay, I didn't get the money to the seller in time, like when you're purchasing, and they have an incentive to walk away. Well, they're going to say, you know what? You haven't closed. That's a breach.
Right.
We're not selling anymore. You're forfeiting your deposit. We've got a right to that. And we're moving on, right? If there's an offer waiting in the wings, and you see that with some markets where things fluctuated quickly, that can be really detrimental. And then not even taking into consideration that you might not have physically anywhere to go. You could be looking at, losing a substantial deposit and having no actual recourse.
And not for any fault necessarily against you, but just all the different
Correct.
things that can happen throughout that. The bank is slow, the lawyer is slow, something it ends up in Brampton, like all these things that could happen, right? Where it's kind of out of your control. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be situations where you might be able to argue for, some equitable relief in a court, but that's not the way you want to go about this. This is going to take you years, and that's not going to be a fun situation. So yeah, just simply, trying to be mindful of when you're setting up those closing dates. When possible, spending that extra few $100 to not close on the same day. I get it's convenient, but set them up, a day apart, pay that little bit of bridge financing, do Wednesday and Thursday. Try and avoid the Friday as well. And
the long weekend Friday for sure, right? That's probably your favorite day for closings.
Well, and it comes back on us, because when they say, you guys just don't want to work on Friday. That's why I push this idea of don't close on Friday.
Which is 50% true.
Yeah, only half true.
Why is it so crazy? Why don't you just do it the way we do it in BC, where everything's just easier?
So how does it work in BC, Steve?
So we have 3 dates on a contract. We have completion date, which is the day the money changes hands. We have the possession date, which is the day the keys change hands. And then we have an adjustment date, which is the date of which the adjustment of the things like property taxes, strata fees, maintenance fees, whatever, get adjusted for. So possession and adjustment are almost always the same day.
Okay, that was my question.
Right. So, for instance, we close on, everybody focuses so much on price in a transaction that they don't focus on, well, how am I actually going to make the move? It's actually the easiest thing for me to negotiate to get a better deal for my clients that other agents are taught in the course. Complete on a Wednesday or a Thursday, give keys the next day. That's what they're taught. So completion this day. If there's any mistakes, possession tomorrow at noon, something like that. So what we do is almost every single transaction, when we sell a listing, we close it on a Wednesday. When that person buys the new one, we close it on a Thursday. So completion is Wednesday, Thursday on the sale and then the purchase. And then keys, because they teach it in the course to do it the next day, we get them keys for the new place on Friday, but we hold keys for the old place till Sunday.
Your real estate website should work as hard as you do, and that's where Realty Ninja comes in to create a beautiful website that helps you convert online leads, that doesn't give you all these tech issues and will match with the brand that you already have. Steve's been using Realty Ninja for over 10 years, and we have a promo code for listeners of the Tom Storey Show. RealtyNinja.com/Tom will give you 20% off your first year, and you don't pay $1 until your website launches. RealtyNinja.com/Tom. And now, back to the podcast.
Okay. So you built a window to actually move in.
If there's any problems, if there's a move in, so you get both. I mean, often it's not the Friday for keys, it's Saturday. So, but you should have 24 hours with both properties if your agent is negotiating it in your best interest. Now, the objection we get from people that move here from Ontario is, well, I completed on Wednesday, so now I'm paying my mortgage from Wednesday and I don't get keys until Friday, so I don't want to do it. I'm like, this is a lot cheaper than bridge financing, mind you. It's only it's only interest in the first period anyway. Like, it's a very small amount. The catch is you need your insurance for all the way through possession of your old place and completion of your new place, so you have double insurance. But when we used to do it the old way, and we did for many years, where you're giving both sets of keys like on Saturday, your client's leaving at noon, and the moving truck of the other guy is hitting them in the bumper in the front yard, trying to push them out. So if somebody's delayed a little bit, if the cleaners haven't cleaned in time, whatever the case is, there was just headache after headache after headache. Yeah. So now I do everything at 24 hours with both properties, and there's still headaches, right? Okay. But I just don't understand why it would be done in such an insane way, although I don't know another way.
I was going to say, I don't know your way. I mean, you're making some points to say, okay, is this something we should be looking at? But I'm sure there's some negatives to this, but it'd be interesting to consider.
I was always
adjusted for, right? Everything's adjusted for. So like your property taxes, everything is the day you leave the house. So I think it makes a ton of sense. The other thing I can't get my head around is, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Ontario, you get the keys from the lawyer?
Well, there's lock boxes that take care of that these days, but...
Oh, is there? Okay.
Well, technically it's the lawyer, right? Like technically,
Yeah,
the
I
lawyer
mean-
still tells you can do it.
We release the code now instead of the keys.
Where do you
like,
get the
I
code
remember-
from?
Exactly. I remember transacting before COVID, and you went to the lawyer's office
Yeah.
to pick up the keys, which means my business would already change because we do a lot of transactions for people not in Toronto because everything's done virtually. Now, if they had to physically come to Toronto, well, they wouldn't be hiring me. So that's how we used to do it. Then COVID kind of changed that, and it became leave the lockbox on the property. The realtors give us the code. Once we're closed, we release the code. Client goes in, gets the key themselves, and then they just leave the lockbox up. Realtor picks it up a day or two later.
Tom, what are you doing? Sitting back having a latte at home? You're not
Well,
there for possession?
That's the thing. I was always envious because I would see the posts in BC from all my friends that sell real estate out there, and they'd be like with their client, giving them like a fruit basket or a knife or, a closing gift. They had champagne set up because they actually had time to get in there and create that first walk into the property experience to be great for their client. We don't have access to that in Toronto. We could you could maybe go the last buyer visit the day before and leave stuff behind, but you're not supposed to leave stuff in the property that they don't own yet.
What do you do
couldn't
when
it.
there's a pile of lumber left in the garage and the old paint cans left in the garage and the house isn't clean? Do they phone? Which one of you guys do they phone?
You call Zachary and you say, "What are you going to do about this?"
Yeah, that's a phone call we're getting. There's I can send a letter. That's going to work about 10% of the time. And then your actual legal remedy is to sue for damages and small claims court. It's really annoying. So that's why I'm big onto that last inspection day. Leave at least one business day in between. So if you've asked for, professionally cleaned or clean, swept manner, and you're like, hey, there's a bunch of garbage, I got a lot more leverage when we haven't sent money yet. Right. If I'm, going to them, even though it's not necessarily something we can't, I can't hold up a closing because of something like that. It doesn't go to the basis of the contract, but I can at least make a much better argument when I'm still holding on the money. Once that's set,
But Steve, wouldn't that be the issue for you guys? Because the money's already sent.
It's a massive
and then
issue.
If there is a bunch of stuff left in the house, then I see your system
and
is
I'm the
dumb.
moron giving the keys. So then I walk in and there's a bunch of paint cans and everything sitting there. Or there's I was at one last week where there was some sandbags for some reason left in the backyard, and it's like, I guess these are going in the back of my pickup truck, and then they're my problem, right? So it is the realtor's problem. You're right. The remedy is sue the other person, or can we make it go away really quickly? And I've had some absolute nightmares. I wish I could offload that to the lawyers. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Exactly. Actually, Tom, you brought up that point of not being there for the closing. And I remember this when I was, early on my realtor days, my dad gave me an idea. He's like, hey, I used to send, get lunch or pizza for the clients as they're moving in. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. They're going through the move-in, and to have some sandwiches or pizza, it's a nice touch. And then you realize the logistics of trying to figure out, okay, well, when does this actually close? When is your moving truck arranged for? How do I actually pull this off? And like you said, you don't know when the deal necessarily closed.
Yeah.
So I experienced this. So one of the first things when we were building my system was, when we're sending out emails once we're officially closed, right? We're updating the municipality. Hey, we have, there's a new registered owner. One of the emails we send is not only to the client, but to the realtor. Say, hey, by the way, transaction's closed. And that little change, it's one extra email from our, system.
Hey, can you tell all the other realtors in Ontario to maybe let the realtors know when the deal closes?
The reaction I got from this was unbelievable. The amount of realtors were like
we have no idea. We have no idea. Our clients tell us.
Yeah, and doesn't it feel weird? You did all this work to be with them every step of the transaction, and they're like, "Hey, did you close today?" Everything.
Usually, when you hear nothing, it's like, "All right, we're probably good."
Yeah,
I don't know.
We see it all the time. We don't know until our office sends us a registration, and most of the registrations are still to this day faxed to our office. Right. So there's the ladies have to walk by the fax machine. I don't know why this is the way, but I guess there's more emails being used now, but there's still a fax machine, and you'll go through and they'll be like, oh, here's the registration letter. And then they'll scan that back into the computer. And if we're lucky, that's when we'll find out if we're sold. Usually it doesn't happen until the next day. So we do have the ability though to put our possession on the completion day. which is, definitely
You could
possible.
do it. Yeah.
So then those ones are like, well, if we have completion possession the same day, I better make sure I get that letter. And getting that letter, that's a
I
tough
remember early in my career, I would call people, even if it was just like a lease closing, I would try to do that. I'm like, I'm going to go to Tim Hortons and drop stuff off. And they'd be like, I'm in an elevator sweating. Can I call you back? They like didn't want to talk at all. And actually the funniest piece of advice we ever got was from Keith Roy. He said, if you ever go meet your clients on closing day, show up in a suit because then they won't ask you to help them move.
I love that. That's so good.
I thought that was kind of funny. We had one recently where there was like a small thing between both sides that needed to get done, and we were like 2 days before closing. And it was one of those things that in the past, the lawyer that we had worked with was like, if this happens again, just let us do it. It's just easier at this point. We're already in communication. Don't do an amendment. We'll just get this done. But we had one where the other lawyer was like, oh no, the realtors have to do that. It was like passed between like, who's going to do the extra little, I was like, I don't care to do it, but just tell us how you want to do it. But I want to move on here.
Tom, I want to actually, this brings up a perfect point. Are you able to share the horror story you told me now?
Oh,
because I would like to get the lawyer opinion on, because you told me a horror story the other day that you just have to tell me if you can say it or not.
I can say it. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't even like a horror story. It was just like I was scratching my head. Okay, so Zachary, it was a condo that sold. It's closed now. Everything's good. Everybody's happy. Well, everyone's mildly okay, I guess. So we sold it. My clients were moving to a different province once this was sold, but they had not actually left yet. Now, they booked their second and final buyer visit the day before closing. And it was like, okay, that's normal. You check on all the appliances, make sure things are working, little stuff like that. The day before that, I got a text from the other realtor saying, hey, are you going to remove the wallpaper from one of the bedrooms? And so I quickly looked back at the APS. I'm like, did we say anything about removing wallpaper? I was like, no, it's not in there. So I was like, oh, no, as per APS, that wasn't agreed upon. Like, thought that was pretty straightforward. But I guess at one point I had told her like, hey, my guys are moved out now. So if you want to book your last visit, here's when you can do it. But my guys were still in town checking on the property. Anyways, they go in, do their buyer visit, leave. My clients go back that night and they call me frantically. They're like, Tom, all the wallpaper has been ripped off the wall. Their clothing is in the wash. They've left all these things at the property. It hasn't even, is this not property damage? So I called the other, and there was some other thing about the sink. And I'm like, if you think I'm going to call my client now after you've ripped down their wallpaper and left stuff in the property and ask about a sink issue, but they were she's like, well, I just assumed they were gone. I'm like, you thought you could just cause property damage? Now, I just said, this is silly. This is so dumb. Whatever, they were going to do it the next day. My seller was like, is this normal? I'm like, this has never, ever happened before. The craziest assumption I've ever seen. So there's lots of fingers you could point here and blame. And
who ripped down the wallpaper?
Well, the buyers or their realtor.
Did they come prepared with tools?
Apparently, it was ripped down. It was gone. I didn't see it. I just got the call from my client being like, hey, we feel a little weird. Why did they? Because I never told the seller they asked about the wallpaper because it wasn't a thing. It's like, no, they're moved out. They're not going to remove it. It's not in the APS. And I guess somehow they took that as like, oh, well, when we go on our buyer visit, we're just going to rip it down.
Before completion.
Which, if they were moved out and never went back, they would have never known. I would have never known. It was the day before completion. But still, you'd think just there's some level of common sense.
Yeah, and it sounds like the realtor was supportive of their decision.
Yeah, there was no sorry. It was like, hey, what about this sink issue? I'm like, my guys are pissed.
Yeah, it was like, hey, sorry that I thought you guys were gone. Well, yeah, it's property damage in a way.
Right.
It's if there was actual damages and for some reason the deal didn't close, then you're looking at, okay, well, we have some recourse on whatever they've caused. Right. If that's hurting a future sale, I would say that's foreseeable. I can see that being in the realm of damages. But yeah, you'd be suing based on damage. Same way if somebody just came for a showing and busted all the appliances.
What about if they didn't want to close and were like, well, the property is not in the same substantial condition of when I purchased it, which is in our contract of purchase and sale. So it's like, what Or if, again, what if the deal doesn't close now? Like, what if your
Right.
mortgage, something happens at the last minute and you've just destroyed this person's property?
Yeah, what if the check ends up in Brampton and it's 5 p.m. and we can't close today and there's no wallpaper and it's the Friday of a long weekend? Then what?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's, hey, how much damage did they cause? Can we quantify it? So, I mean, I think that's the way. I've never seen that, though. I got to say.
Me neither. I got this call from my client who's so lovely. And I was like, but she was like, I don't know if I should be angry. Is this normal? I'm like, this is not normal. I've never seen this before.
Well, how do you deal with appliances? Because I'm seeing that question come up a lot, and I haven't been able to get like a straight, hey, here's the law on this, because I don't think we have anything that settled it. But
what working order means?
Testing appliances or testing them on the walkthroughs, right? Because the client, like I've seen sellers say, hey, somebody left the stove on. Like this could have been a real problem.
Because you'd think, but that's one of the things in the buyer visit you'd want to do on the final buyer visit, to make sure that the stove works and there's no ice buildup in the back of the freezer. Yeah, it's a tough one. We've never had any major like big issues with appliances being left on or anything like that. There was one where like the day before closing, it was like one of the stove burners wasn't working and you just had to like kind of turn it. It was like you're like sitting on your phone at 8 p.m. at night trying to figure out why the burner's not working when I'm trying to put my kids to sleep. And I'm like, what am I doing? I should have just done commercial real estate. But I don't have an answer for you. It's one of those things where it's like they have to be in working order. So you'd think you check to make sure they're in working order. But then if they break when you're the one doing it, then what happens if it's the day before?
Yeah, exactly. There's a liability aspect of like, hey, what if things are left on? Whose fault is that? Who's insured for this? Is it the agents? Is it the the actual property insurance? And then it's, trying to figure out that good working order part of, I mean, technically you're using the remedy of, suing after the fact for the warranty that was promised. Right. So if you said, hey, the stove's not working, again, as a buyer, you can't not close because of that. Right. Because there's kind of, when you're looking at a breach in a contract, there's two different ways it can go. It's considered either a condition precedent or a warranty. Yeah. So when we're dealing with condition precedents, it has to actually go to where this has to be done in order to satisfy the whole effect of the contract. Right. When it's a warranty, something like, hey, this is going to be in good working order, or hey, I agree to provide a survey. We just dealt with this one. Right. They sent a document and I looked at it and my client is buying. So we got the survey and I was like, this isn't a survey. It says actually right on it that it's not a survey. My client was relying on it for certain reasons for a development application in the future. And I was like, you can't use this for what you're thinking you can. So right from there, I was like, okay, but we've got the clause in the agreement of purchase and sale. And typically it says, we'll provide a survey if available. In this case, it wasn't written like that. Right. The sellers took it as, oh, well, we got this from the city, so it's official. And I was like, that literally means nothing here. This is not a survey. You guys have to provide one. So instead, we were able to negotiate a price abatement. And that was actually, you brought that up. I called the other lawyer because the realtors were trying to figure out an amendment. It wasn't going anywhere. So I called up the other lawyer and I was like, can we just get this done? I was like, here's the APS. There's no legal arguments here. We've got 3 quotes, looking for an average of it. Price will adjust on closing, for the amount. And they were like, oh, well, I talked to my client and she says they want the realtor to deal with it. I was like, okay, so they don't want you to handle this at all. And she's like, no. I was like, okay, then have your realtor call me. Because I'm authorized to deal with this. Just let's get this done. We have 2 days before closing.
That's a big problem here with, like when stuff comes down to the day before closing or the closing date, a lot of the time the lawyers here will be like, well, draft up an addendum and send it to me. And I'm like, listen, if you think I'm touching this contract on closing day, you are super wrong. But a lot of the time, I don't know if it's the lawyers are too busy or if they don't want to charge or if the client doesn't want to pay for the charge. But they're like, well, your realtor's not going to charge you to make this change. But it's too far down the pipe.
Maybe that's what it is, right? That's probably what it is, right?
Buying a home is a big deal, so don't let your home inspection cause you more stress. For over 45 years, Carson Dunlop has helped buyers across Canada understand the homes that they are buying with detailed, calm, clear, client first inspections. Carson Dunlop inspectors don't just point out problems, they explain what really matters in a way that will protect you in your home purchase. If you want confidence in your home inspection, top agents and home buyers trust Carson Dunlop. So to check out where they service and to book your inspection, go to carsondunlop.com right now.
It could be.
Lawyer will charge a little bit more for the extra work. Realtor's getting paid regardless. They've already made their money.
Yeah, again, it depends. And sure, there are a lot of lawyers who run their business as, we're very, very high volume. Anything outside the norm adds a cost to this. So
Sure.
when you're looking at it from purely that standpoint, yeah, anything that you don't have to do, you don't. But I take a different approach. We're in a very saturated area of the market. There's many lawyers who will do a residential closing, even if that's not their focus.
Right.
So for me, it's how much value can I provide? So I price myself, and when we get requests for discounts, I'm very clear of like, I built this based on the time I know I have to spend. And when issues come up, I'm going to be there in those last few days before closing, I'm your advocate to get this done. Again, having that realtor experience, I know the things that are going on. So I'm willing to step in and do that. And part of having a small team allows us to do that. But there's definitely firms out there that are not operating that way at all.
Can we talk about pricing for real estate lawyer services? Because at least in the listing contract or the buyer contract, it's very clear that it's a certain percentage typically of the sale price that the realtors are being paid plus HST. It's written in there. But most real estate lawyer ads I see, and I'm assuming every industry is the same, right? Like you got the top people that are probably a bit more expensive but better. You got the cheaper ones, and then it's all the stuff in between, right? Like it's the same in every single industry. Mostly what I see is the $899 plus. It's like, okay, but what's the plus? Is title insurance included in the plus? Do I think I'm paying the lawyer that? What does it get to? Nobody knows what a real estate, like we give people ranges. Typically in Toronto, say like a normal closing is $1,500 to $2,000. Like budget that for your real estate lawyer. But why is pricing so all over the place with lawyer fees versus other parts of the industry?
Yeah, so it starts with this idea of the pricing is a legal fee plus disbursements.
Yeah.
And there's two definitions of disbursements. The Law Society says, hey, these are what you can advertise as disbursements. So it is things like title insurance, title search costs,
Right.
A tax certificate from the municipality. So these can technically be disbursements, but that covers advertisements. So if you call up a lawyer and he says, my fee is $899 plus disbursements, he can also be talking about office disbursements. Things like, that's when you see photocopy, fax, software transaction charge. So I had, it was like a friend of a friend, and I was talking with them the other day, and they're like, hey, we just sold our condo. And then they figured out what I did, and they're like, oh, well, we had this issue we got a quote for $800 plus disbursements, and our final bill was $2,032.
Right.
I was like, will you show me what it is? And they showed me. So I'm looking through it all. And, there was something like a conveyancer fee, which means the lawyer hired another conveyancer to do some sort of title searching and then charged that back to the client. They paid $290 in software transaction charges. In our industry, we know which company that is. There's a lot cheaper options, which most of us have switched to, but there's a certain one. And there's a lot of very inflated disbursements, right? There is $20 in photocopying fees. I run a virtual firm. Like we don't do any photocopying. I don't know many firms that are still doing it. Obviously some still do, but $20 in photocopying seems a little off because we have a requirement to actually charge what we're spending.
Right.
So it's just become this, again, a very saturated market where the number that you're advertising is becoming important. So that number keeps dropping. Now, there's a few of us in the industry that are moving to all-inclusive pricing. And the arguments I hear are, why did lawyers always do it like this? Because they're like, well, some transactions, we have more title searching. We're going to spend a little bit more time. This one costs more. But, you guys run businesses. Is any one of your files the same? Right. No. I'm sure you've done deals where you're like, you know what, my hourly on this commission is unbelievable. And then I'm sure you've done ones where you're like, I made below minimum wage when I talk about how many hours you put in.
Yeah, you make nothing sometimes.
Absolutely.
Zero.
Yeah. So, that's normal in business. So what we did for a year and a half was we tracked all our costs. And then I said, okay, I can average where I'm at on a purchase. I can average where I'm at on a sale. I can build one number, give it to the client so they can actually budget. They know what they're going to be paying. There's no surprises. And then we even have a list on a retainer agreement that says, hey, if this happens, this is what we normally charge. If this happens, so like for me, it's the transparency, especially a first-time home buyer who's already worried about this process. Give them as much information so they know down to the cent what it's going to cost.
Do you think for the consumer though, and I don't know what you can tell us what you charge or not, you don't have to do it on here, but let's say it's like the Walmart pricing $8.99 and that catches my attention. I mean, it's literally the same thing as just underpricing a property with an offer date in Toronto, really.
Right.
And then you have your fee, which let's just say is $1,500. I'm not saying that's what it is, but let's just say that's a number. If I'm a first-time home buyer and I know no different, I see the $8.99 and the all-inclusive $1,500. I'm like, well, the $8.99 probably doesn't get to $1,500. I'm just going to take my chance with that.
Yeah.
Is that something you get in your conversations with clients?
I literally wrote about almost exact numbers you're talking about too. So that
really?
sale, it was 800 plus disbursements, ended up at 2,032.
Right.
For that same type of transaction, my fee would have been $1,599 plus tax.
Right.
I would have been $200 cheaper. But you're right. When you're looking at those numbers, it looks like, well, I got to go with the $800 here. It's a better price.
Mhm.
And and I realize I'm losing some business because there's now going to be a time where we have to educate our consumers. And until we actually get changes that say, hey, we can't continue to advertise this way, this is a problem that's going to be there. But, we're lucky enough, we're at a point where a lot of our work comes from referral. And the ones that are finding us just based on our legal fee calculator or, even just from online, they're price shopping. And it's typically not the client that you want to build your business on.
Yep.
So it's looking at it that way as well. It's, again, we're losing out on some, but it hasn't stopped us from growing and building our business.
It's absolutely crazy to me that there is as much price shopping as there is in real estate lawyers. And the reason I think is, okay, so you're currently selling a $1.5 million asset. And this guy's gonna, you should be much more focused on, do I think this is the right person to help me close the transaction? Or if I need advice, like we are told if something goes out of our scope to advise our clients to go get legal advice. And we also say that in every single contract that we write. If there's anything that you're not comfortable with, you need to go get the independent legal advice. I don't think I've ever had a client once ever go and pay a lawyer for an hour of their time to get an opinion. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. And it blows my mind that somebody's going to risk $200 to close with, the guy that, there's no office, there's no website. I mean, we have lots of those out here where there's no website, and you're like, well, how do I get it? The guy's got a Facebook page. I'm like, your lawyer has a Facebook page. But this is the reality of what people do because they want to try and save $200 or $300 in the midst of pulling out $1 million worth of equity on their property. So, I mean, I guess the same could be said for ours. Probably a lot higher fees for us, but the same could be said for our industry or any industry, right?
It's the way the industry went, and it became this. Everyone in real estate focused on this high volume kind of business model, and even to the point where we get a lot of calls from people with issues. So things like boundary disputes, want to sever their property. I take on some of that work, more handpick it, because I'm also of the belief, like, as we build, what I want to do is build something a little more comprehensive, because I believe that, building legal services tailored to homeowners is something that we don't exactly have out in our market. So, the old model, though, is anything outside of that scope that fits that perfect transaction to do it at high volume, a lawyer's not going to put in any extra work to do this. Right. So people call us like, hey, can you fix this? And it's like, no, you actually need a litigation lawyer. But they're like, oh, but it's real estate. You're a real estate lawyer. And they'll spend all day calling and no one's going to touch that because that's not what we've traditionally thought of what a real estate lawyer does. So we've built ourselves into this area, and now it's become this, bring the prices down. There are all these transaction mills. We're seeing these, competitors come up that are AI driven or, modern or simplified real estate closings, and you won't find a lawyer's name anywhere on those sites. So they're building these fancy websites and nice intake systems. And then they're just farming out to lawyers who are running other practices who are like, oh, I'll take a cut fee to review this quickly. And it's, I'm taking the opposite approach. We brand under my name. We're trying to, educate. I'm trying to build a team. Like my clerk, unbelievable. She's so good at what she does. And that's a big part of, us building that up, making sure she stays educated and is always improving. And we want to build the best team we can.
It's a very interesting because everything you just said is the exact same for me and Steve. Like we have the exact same versions where the tech money comes in and these companies are built by people that are not really involved in real estate at all, right? But see the available commissions or real estate fees or whatever in any side of it, just the money available, and go like, oh, I'm just going to build a tool that is user friendly that then I can outsource this, and some will work and some won't, and we've seen it over the years.
You try and sell it to Bell Media or Rogers Group or something, and then it fails.
I don't know. At the end of the day, listen, Zachary, your job, me and Steve's job, we're on the list of the jobs that are most likely to be replaced by AI, apparently, with a new report that just came out. So Steve, it might be time. Actually, maybe even not even manual labor is safe because the robots are going to build for us. But we've been flying through this. I got so many things I want to ask you. So let's go back for a second here. Tenanted properties. Okay. Mm-hmm. Tenanted properties in Toronto. We advise our clients at the beginning. We talk to them about the different occupancy statuses when they are going to be a buyer. And we say up front, listen, like it's safer to buy vacant or owner occupied because there's less potential complications on closing. So just for our audience, some people are very engaged in real estate that watch a show. Some are realtors, but some are like brand new. This is the first episode. So buying a tenanted property in Toronto, give me the lawyer's outlook. Should they even do it? What are the risks involved? What happens if the tenant doesn't leave? Can you put in, I guess it's not really a condition because it's not conditional, but it's like a clause that says if the tenant doesn't leave, then we can extend the closing. But if they still don't leave, then we can get out of this transaction up to the closing date. Give me the whole scope of tenanted proproperties because there's a lot to unpack, right?
Yeah, and let's look at it from that buyer end. So much risk when going in with a tenanted property. And a lot of people don't quite understand it. And I even get realtors who call me and they're like, oh, well, it's no big deal. We're going to send them an N12. It's like, okay, well, it's a lot to this. So once there's a tenant in the property, the actual owner or the current owner doesn't have any right to evict. Just because, you want to sell your property and you have a tenant, that's not an option to evict. However, if you enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with a buyer who intends to use it for personal use, they then acquire a right to evict the tenant. So they can serve notice even when the agreement hasn't closed, but has been, is created in firm. So basically firm it up. You still have time before the closing date, but you can serve an N12 on the buyer's behalf. Now a tenant could take that N12 and say, okay, great, take me to the LTB. So even though it's a notice that says you have to leave by this date, they have absolutely no obligation to leave. Now, then we get into, you have to apply for a hearing with the landlord and tenant board, and that can take 3 to 6 months on a good day. And once you get there, you still have to, make a case to get this tenant, even if it's as simple as, hey, I intend to move in here. So how that works on the actual agreements, like you said, Tom, you can build those clauses in, and sure. I have templates that I provide for that. But it doesn't practically work as well as it seems, because if I'm buying a house, I'm not going to find this out till the day before. So I just spent 2 months assuming I was going to be moving. Did I sell my house currently?
Right.
Did I give notice at the place I was renting? What am I going to do now that this isn't closing or it's being extended? And then if for some reason you don't get a favorable decision, well, now you're back to a point where you can't actually close on that transaction. So for me, there's more risk for the sellers. And I see sellers enter into these, not really thinking it through. And it's like, oh, I'm going to provide vacant possession. Okay, how are you going to guarantee vacant possession here? We need to build in this kind of clause that protects it. And then for me, you talk about how much value does it hurt your property when selling tenanted? Well, if I can't guarantee vacant possession, how many buyers out there really exist that are willing to take a conditional
not in this market, not with the amount of inventory.
Absolutely none. So, I had somebody call me and it was like, hey, should I come to an agreement? So we have cash for keys agreements to get my tenant out, or should I just sell it tenanted? And I'll usually talk to your realtor about the difference in value, but let me explain why this is going to affect your value so much. Mm-hmm. And it's because how many buyers will actually exist? And like you said, in this market right now, that's going to be a huge amount. So if you have the cash, it might be worth it to pay $15,000 to get a tenant out, $20,000, because that's going to, you're going to make that back on the sale price.
So the N12 is that when the property is sold firm, you can give the tenant notice that sold firm, the new owner is going to be living there, and it's 60 days from the beginning of the next month. Am I correct on that? Okay. So if you sold it in the 17th day, it starts the first day of the next month just for those 60 days. It's not 60 days from the date that you submitted it. The N9 is the tenant sending the form that they're ending tenancy, and the N11 is the mutual agreement of end of tenancy between landlord and tenant. I'm correct on that? That's all?
Yes. Yeah, so N11, and it's a funny one because it's technically a notice form, but the other ones you're providing notice. So either the tenant providing notice to the landlord providing notice to the tenant. The N11 is a very blank contract template. There's no form for an N11. You can create your own. And in fact, I give a lot of my realtors a template that says, don't use the N11. Here's an actual release agreement that we've drafted that covers the other terms. Because it's really blank for a reason. You can come up with any contractual term as long as both parties agree to it. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of ways that can go wrong, but same thing with the N12. We see a lot of those in the agreement, but how often and you see it, Tom, how often is it contemplated who's paying the 1 month rent?
Buying insurance is boring and frustrating, but SquareOne.ca makes it easy. For your landlord, tenant, or homeowner insurance policy, go to SquareOne.ca/The Tom Storey Show to get your free quote in just minutes. Use our link, SquareOne.ca/The Tom Storey Show right now, and you'll save $20.
Well, usually I would say the seller is the one that pays the 1 month's rent. And that's actually something that correct me if I'm wrong here, but that 1 month's rent compensation to the tenant with a property sold with new owner occupying didn't used to be a thing. It used to only be if you were moving back into your own place. And then during the pandemic, did they not sneak that one in? That was like a new rule that changed?
I'm not sure exactly when it came in, but as long as I've ran my practice, it's been a thing. Okay. And so many times we get to that point where now they're arguing over, $2,500 of who's to pay this. And there's an argument for the seller. It's like, hey, you need to provide vacant possession. But then it's the counter argument is, well, you're purchasing and it's for your benefit. So, it's just much better for everyone. Outline in the contract. So again, we have a template clause.
They actually have to pay though. They have to pay the last month's rent back to the tenant, or do they just get the last month's rent free? Because here it's just free.
It's actually it's worded as compensation. So the fact that you're using this eviction process, you have to provide the tenant with a payment equal to 1 month's rent. So it's not necessarily saying, hey, give back last month's rent. It's here's a payment in the amount because we're relying on this.
Yeah, for us, we now have to give 90 days notice plus 3 days because apparently you need 3 days for some reason to say that that's delivered notice. But now we have 90 days and then they just get the last 30 for free.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right. So then it's obviously adjusted for, but it's very true what you're saying. Like we have people showing our properties that are tenanted or owner occupied, and we'll look through and we'll be like, okay, so, we'll phone some agents that sold in the billing. Why did you not show ours? Well, we were only showing owner occupied or vacant properties, or the other way around, right? Like I've had agents phone me and say like, listen, we're interested in yours because it's owner occupied and we want a closing within 60 days or something like that. Right. So it is a legitimate part of the business that's going on because it can be a horror story. Tom, are you allowed to share your horror story now, or is that not allowed?
Like my personal one?
The old place, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean I can talk about that. I was moving back into my own property. I was moving back in. We had just got our dog. We were thinking about having kids, and we wanted levels, floors, I should say. We were in a condo, and I had bought this property that we had rented out to a family, and I gave them the N12 that I was. I guess what is it when you're moving back in? Is it the N12?
It would still be the N12.
It'd still be the N12. Yeah. So I gave them the N12. By the way, dropped it off at the door as well as emailing it to them. And is that still like legally what has to happen, or can it just be an email these days?
You can agree to email, but it's got to be in the lease, and the tenant can withdraw that consent.
So you got to do both no matter what. Like make sure it's
I advise that.
both. And they basically just said no. Yeah. We're not. We know what the rules are, and we're not leaving. They kept paying rent for the most part. There was still an issue at the end. I said okay. So I went to landlord tenant, did the L2. Got a court hearing day, went in. I had all my dates in front of me. I went up, I spoke. This is when it was, I don't know if it's in person anymore, but this was before the pandemic. Did all my thing, went through all the dates and everything and just presented my case. And I knew I was going to win, but it took 4 months to get a court date and then another 30 or 60 days to get the like thing saying you've won. This is a sheriff will remove them date. And then they finally moved. But they knew how the system worked.
Or did they move once the order came?
They finally agreed to move once the order came. Because they were probably just told, like, just say no.
Yep. No real recourse.
Guess what? I got possession to my own house to move in December of 2019. Could you, if this had started the pandemic, there's no way. Never would have happened.
Yeah, because they did some sort of freeze or something on.
Yeah, they froze it.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Anyways, okay, I still got a lot of things I want to ask you, so I'm going to go quick here, okay?
Wait, let's just do the public service announcement. If your tenant leaves and you're thinking about selling within the next year or 2 or 3, might be a time to put it on.
You should do it. You should do it now.
Vacant is way better. Vacant is way better. I'm considering next time my basement tenant leaves that, I'm thinking about selling 2-3 years down the road.
Most of my calls from condo sellers now is, hey, the tenant gave notice. Should I sell it now? How much worse is the market going to get? Should I rent it out again and take the chance of selling it next year, but with the tenant a month to month? And I'm like, here's what's happening now. I can't tell you the future, but this is the price that you can get today. Zachary, we actually had a listing recently that was tenanted, but they had bought a place. So they gave us the N9, and it's like on MLS, I still put it as tenanted, even though I knew they were leaving. And I don't know what the legal, maybe you can tell me what the legal is on that. I didn't say owner occupied, I put tenanted, but the first line of the client remarks was N9 sent vacant possession on this day just to try to grab attention. But we wouldn't have been showing up on anyone that set up a search that wasn't, that didn't have tenanted as an option, which limits your exposure.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, I think you are tenanted because what if they don't act on it? Right. You have to then go to the LTB to enforce it. So you're still dealing with a tenant for all intents and purposes. But yeah, that's a good point on just the marketability of those searches that are only capturing vacant or owner occupied.
Our clients tell us to do that all the time when we set up the property searches.
Yeah.
They're like, just send me owner or vacant. So tenanted makes a big difference. I should do an updated review on tenanted sold properties and try to give you like an actual what percentage can you get. I could run the numbers. You could figure it out because there's not that. I know the percentage of them that sell is significantly lower. I know that's a fact, but it'd be interesting to see like apple to apple what the price change
list to sale ratio. Is that how you would do that, Tom, or what?
Yeah, percentage of just that what's sold, but then list to sale and try to find enough examples of same square footage, same 60-day period, had parking, like same building. That would be helpful. But I don't know.
We have 2 deals on my desk right now, which we never see these come together, but it's tenant buying the condo. Oh, and it's one of those things where it's like, hey, the tenant wants to make an offer. Sure, let him make an offer. Those deals never come together. And like we had 2 come in like within a week of each other. And I was like, this never happens.
There you go. First time. That's a first time home buyer, right? Yeah. Just liking the place that they're living in. Okay, I want to ask you about this because this is coming up a lot. I've had this conversation with my parents recently, and we've had some people from RBC actually come speak to our team about it. And it is about adding me or my sister to title of my parents' properties because probate is its own thing, and we can go over all that. And then we have properties for sale right now that are POA, and I didn't know this until recently, honestly. POA ends if the person passes away.
Yep.
Right. So that's like, that could be a massive issue. So just generally like the POA going on title, is it worth it? Setting up the Bear Trust, give our audience a bit of breakdown on that.
For a lot of people, it will make sense if it's done properly. So we get a lot of calls on this. And for me, a first red flag is the children calling versus the parent. Because when it's the children calling, I'm like, okay, are we sure that mom or dad knows that you're attempting to do this.
Mhm.
So there are some risks. And if you Google this issue, for example, you're going to see like 10 articles on like why not to do this. And, when you're looking at it from the parent's perspective, they're losing control of the property because now you need extra signatures to do anything, right? You're going to have things like, potential capital gains is going to be an issue, not so much for the parent, but then you get into the kids. Now you can mitigate all this with a trust declaration that's saying, hey, they're not the beneficial owners. So again, we can set them up properly. You can avoid that probate, which is going to be 1.5% minus the first 50,000 of the estate. So, $15,000 on $1 million property. Again, it's whether that's worth the loss of control, right? You open it up, potential creditors, once you have more people on title. And it's one of those things like, when entering into a marriage where, to my kids, there's no problems that will actually happen. And then you can go find, cases and cases of issues where it's parents and children fighting over a property. So, especially on certain estates, it's going to be a way to avoid that probate tax. But more importantly, I think where a lot of people want the benefit is timing. You don't have to go through 3 to 6 months of probate to sell that property. You can then, we register a survivorship application that can take an afternoon, and then, you're ready to sell the next day. Now, when you're talking about the POA, same thing. One of the hot button things I talked about with brokerages, it's like, hey, if you have a seller with a POA, number one, figure out where is your client actually at. Is it because they're not in the country, or is it because they're, not in good health? Because if they pass either during the listing process or worse, after the agreement is signed, well, you no longer have authority to sell it because the POA dies with the person. So then it becomes the executors of the estate.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, that could be two different people making those decisions. But then that property also has to go through probate. Now in Toronto or in Ontario, we have a first dealings exemption. So certain properties that if they were purchased in the registry system, which is usually pre-2000, and there's been no dealings since, so no transfers of the property, single owner, and you'll get this with older homeowners, where their property doesn't actually have to go through probate. We can sell and rely on this exemption. So I ended up dealing with one early on in my career. I wrote an article on it. We get a lot of these files, so we've done quite a bit of these. One issue that comes up is depending on how the estates are set up, you may still have to pay the probate tax, because if there's other assets that require probate, you still have to pay on the value of the home, even though you don't have to wait for probate. So you get the benefit of the speed, but you don't necessarily get the tax savings. Now, you can set up your wills, and it's called having multiple wills. So you have one will where that property is on its own, and then another will with the rest of the assets. And I'm not an estate planning lawyer, but there's a way to set this up that allows for both the speed and the tax savings. So for me, that's a huge market opportunity. And I've talked to a couple of state lawyers of like, you guys need to advertise this. Like,
Right.
This is a huge benefit to say, hey, like, there's a lot of people out there that own properties that qualify for this. Set up the estates properly, and there's a lot of value to, number one, the 1.5% saving, as well as just that convenience of being able to go to market.
$5.99 plus disbursements to set up. We're almost wrapping up here on time, and I know you have much more important things to do than give me and Steve and thousands of Canadians free legal advice today. But I wanted to wrap up with one question. I want to talk about your newsletter. I want to make sure that there's realtors listening that get on that. You had done a post on Instagram I thought was interesting about like emojis, or like a thumbs up emoji or a thumbs down emoji or a heart emoji. Does an emoji count as confirmation on something that I'm agreeing to something by sending an emoji as a lawyer?
Well, there was a case, actually, it was out in BC, right, Steve? The thumbs up emoji case.
Steve was just sending poo emojis and got in trouble.
Yeah, so I think the simple facts of it was like the buyer was a realtor. The sellers were two brothers that were unrepresented.
Okay.
They sent an offer, didn't get accepted. Then the sellers sent a sign back. They called it a sign back or a counter offer. They didn't sign it. They just sent it back to the buyer. And the buyer's like, oh, well, these guys just don't know what they're doing. Here, I'm accepting it. When you get a chance, put your signatures on it. And then so he sends out that on email, and then he sends a text message and he says, hey, I accepted the offer. We're good to go. Just, let me know if you have any questions. And the seller responded with a thumbs up emoji. So it went to court, and it was like, hey, does this constitute, a binding agreement? So there's two legal questions there. Number one, is there a legal contract? And number two, is there an enforceable contract? So they ruled that there is a legal contract. Right? We have offer, we have acceptance, you have a mutual understanding of the terms, and you have consideration. Right? We can have verbal contracts. Legally or theoretically, it's a contract. Now, the next question was, is it an enforceable contract? Can we actually rely on the courts to enforce it? And in this case, I can't remember the legislation name in BC, but we have the statute of frauds that says any transaction or any transfer of land has to be done in writing and signed. So we can't have verbal contracts for land in Ontario. Same thing in BC. So once they analyzed it from that view, they said, okay, well, we're not considering this emoji as being in writing and signed. So it didn't go that far. So ultimately, what most people thought, no, it doesn't. But I know there's another case out in Saskatchewan where somebody sent an emoji and it was a contract for grains or something, and that was deemed to be a contract. So be careful what you're texting.
It's like the intention. If you swing when you're playing golf and you miss the ball, but you intended to hit it, it still counts as a stroke. Even if you didn't. I always thought it didn't count if you don't touch it. Apparently, if you intended to hit the ball, it counts as a stroke. Zachary, you have a newsletter for the real estate industry that a lot of people love. For the realtors listening to this, can consumers get on it too, buyers and sellers, or is it kind of just real estate agent focused?
Yeah, I've written it in a way that's specific to realtors, because for me that adds a little bit more value. And I think of the problems I had or dealt with when I was on your side, and I try and give little tips and little things you can take away from that. But I have clients and buyers and sellers who are like, I'm not a realtor, but I like reading it. Right? You can decipher, hey, just because I'm talking to a realtor, there's information here. So, and
how would they sign up for that?
Yeah, so you can go right on my website, and there's a link that says Realtor Newsletter. Type in your email, got to confirm, and
we'll make sure that all that's in the description of this episode. Steve, I'll send that over to you so you have it. Zachary, I appreciate you doing this, man. It was great to meet you.
You as well.
I will be sending you business because I think you're good at what you do, and I like to find people that I think are. You're obviously more successful than me, but in my same range in my industry, I like people that are doing things. And the way you're doing it with social, I have not seen any lawyer do what you're doing. And the content's not just like what we do, Steve. It's not just clickbait stuff. It's like actually helpful. So thank you for doing this. Any kind of final things you want our listeners to know about what's going on in Ontario real estate, or anything about you and your firm?
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on, I always used to say this: when you're looking for a lawyer, I'm not just going to say, hey, choose me, but simply put, make sure you know your lawyer's name. Like, can you actually get him on the phone and call him when you have a problem? Because there's a lot of people who hire a firm and they have no idea who's representing them. So as long as you're choosing someone that at least you know who's your representative, that's, it's half the battle.
And last question, will you come back in the future to talk about pre-construction closings and HST? Because we could do an hour just on those two topics.
I was going to say that's a lot to talk about, but sure.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye. That was great.